What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. An interesting piece of reporting as Unhinged former fake gamer Adam Sessler. Now, he's come out, he wants everyone to know that he wasn't a gamer. He's not actually a gamer. He doesn't like gamers. He doesn't like game journalists. He doesn't apparently like anybody. But former co-host or host of G4 TV, Adam Sessler, went on a podcast with a few individuals and spilled the beans on Frosk, called it a weird, confusing mess. He also talked about where everything went wrong for G4 TV. Speaking of video games, if you're considering getting a new computer, allow me to introduce you to people who make my computer, Meta PCs. Huge shout out to this video sponsor, Meta PCs. Look, you've been around, you know that I've been talking about Meta PCs for a very long time. In fact, it's the primary computer I use. But it's not just because they're a sponsor. It's for so many more reasons. They have fully customizable, configurable PCs and all the hardest to find parts in stock and ready to go. They also have ready to ship PCs ready for you today. Here's a couple reasons why I like Meta PCs. First and foremost, it's veteran ownership. Meta PCs is a veteran-owned business. One of Meta's owners has served both in Afghanistan and Iraq and received a Purple Heart for his service. Meta also employs military veterans in Meta's operations center and also provides systems to veterans going back to school to help them re-enter the workforce all across the United States. They offer financing. It has 100% US-based sales and support. And when you receive your PC, it's ready to go right out of the box. So you don't have to get complicated and set things up. You just plug it all in and you're ready to rock. And on top of that, Meta PCs is offering you, my viewer, a huge discount when you use the link in the description or you use promo code TheQuartering. If you use my code at checkout, not only do you save money, but you support my content and a company that will not bow to cancel culture. So maybe you're not ready to pick up a new computer today, but when you are, remember to go to metapcs.com and use promo code TheQuartering to support me and to save money. And everybody wins. Now, Adam Sessler may not be a gamer, but he is a person that loves to play games. This is via clownfishtv.com. Or at least that's how the former Nerd Famous X-Play host described himself in a personal and revealing interview that took place Thursday night, sharing with many fans and gawkers some of the final clues necessary for understanding last year's pathetic collapse of G4 TV. On the podcast, The Biggest Problem in the Universe, featuring YouTubers Vito Gisoldi and Dick Masterson, Sessler finally broke his silence to reveal what it was like working at the doomed TV for Gamers reincarnation, and not only delved into the mistakes made by the network, including Frosk's rant and the ill-prepared owner of Comcast, but also by seemingly agreeing with many of his critics on the errors in gaming journalism. What? After some laughter in the opening, Vito asked Sessler to describe the end of G4 TV. Describing the end of G4 as a weird, confusing mess, Sessler agreed. A weird, confusing mess would be a very good description. Vito then wonders, as many have speculated, if the reason G4 went down for the way it did was that it pushed too much money through and tried to grab attention too quickly without adequately building its organic base, to which Adam also agreed. Adam then refers to the situation and defends Frosk as a very well-written soliloquy about defending a sort of woman's presence in the gaming space. However, Mr. Masterson asks, "You knew she was going to do that ahead of time, right?" For which Adam adds in confirmation of previous reporting, "No," which is interesting to me because she said that she had already had this stuff in the teleprompter and that it was approved and supported by her co-stars and bosses. Mr. Masterson continues, "Would you have advised her to go through with it or delay?" To which Adam responds, "I would never tell someone what to do. Yeah, I don't like that. The only thing I would have probably said is what could happen in terms of the attack." Adam then shared his large concern about working at G4 was he might have been in danger. He might have been a drag on the media venture, worrying that he overshadowed his coworkers. Oh, how humble. But he eventually admits that as soon as Frosk rant happened, well, I wouldn't have kept it from happening, but I became pretty certain the ish storm was on the horizon. Adam wasn't sure how his coworkers, particularly Frosk, were comfortable dealing with all the negativity that came their way. For him, however, he felt comfortable facing it. At one point in the interview, Adam shared that his viral negative Twitter presence was a strategy to gin up ratings for G4 TV, based on trying to grab hate views back in the day of the G4 original. Yeah, it's like, he said, there was a point where in order to keep ratings going, if I needed to bleed myself a little bit, okay, let's do it. And that's why I think people are like, I was so shocked how shocked people were when I was being blunt on Twitter and saying, as I was doing, I was being paid by G4 TV. So my interest was in the ratings and the survival of the show. So now he's saying all the insane things he said about Republicans and all this stuff was to market G4 TV. Vito wondered about the adverse reaction from fans. Was the network expecting that response? And Sessler, after some thought, points out that defining what the network was in terms of Comcast or G4 TV was hard to do. Overall, the network didn't understand who its audience even was. Quote, there did not seem to be a well-informed and understanding of what the internet can do, and more importantly, what the gaming audience was like. Yeah, there was a little too much faith in general humanity that everyone thought I was comically. Vito overselling, Sessler, yeah. Sessler ultimately didn't feel comfortable working for G4 as it didn't meet his expectations. Whether that was due to what he had been told or what he had just assumed, he didn't clarify. I'll be frank, I didn't enjoy much the revamp of G4. It doesn't have to do with the people I worked with or anything like that. I could just tell early on that it was moving in a direction that I wasn't exactly aligned with, and I had thought it was going to be. Vito asked for clarification if this is because of the focus on esports. Sessler said no. I thought it was actually going to try to be more like a formal television show, like instead of television internet melange as that it was. He goes back to the topic of the network about being radically unprepared. When you go into the internet space, whether people do it deliberately or not, people overanalyze. They take the audience too much into consideration. I think, will they get it? Oh, will they like it? Will it make them upset? But the thing is, if you upset the audience, that's not necessarily a negative. You would never know how the audience is going to react, which is the other flip that you can't manufacture virality. Dick then made a joke about the problem being women in gaming. Sessler laughs a little, then looked annoyed and adds, there's actually a kernel of truth, something I do agree with gaming. We have a gaming network that's already too broad. Right now, there's no movie network. There's no book network. The esports audience is a single player audience. There's very, very little overlap that's going to happen there. But to your point, the one size fits all approach to doing a gaming network, period, regardless of gender, predispositions, racial dispositions, that's odd, is really not terribly effective. Because there is no one who loves games so much that they care about every facet of games. That's actually fair. That's fair to say. Vito asked what other mistakes might have been made. Was it a mistake for the new G4 to use the original G4 moniker as branding instead of the same old masculine approach? Sessler thought it was a poor choice. I was an X-Play, and we never looked at our audience being that male. Whereas Attack of the Show, yes, I always forget sometimes how I had to cut for the latter part of the existence of the network. We were the other show with Attack of the Show. We were not the big seller for them. So that aspect, that Olivia aspect, yeah, I think the most lasting impression for most people. But I'll put it to you this way. It did have that baggage. That baggage was not an inherent problem, but it was not addressed sufficiently so that it became a problem. Much later in the conversation, Vito and Mr. Masterson discuss YouTube works as a platform. And then he talks about game journalists, which I thought was pretty funny. Vito brought up the subject of gamer, for which Sessler mocked those that supported it, like he attacked anyone that used the identity of gamer. That was stupid back then, and it's stupid now. It takes part that pissed me off the most was just not the hideous, slanderous attacks that had no basis in reality. Are you talking about the ones from journalists? Because they were like, one could disprove them without any effort, right? But they were legitimate publications that decided to take it seriously enough. But he didn't just aim his fire at gamers. The identifier, and not the hobby he articulated, but also a games journalism for enabling Gamergate, and then pretending to be journalists. Anyway, that was my little platform, but no, there's no merit to it. Why the heck do people care that much about games journalism to the extent that it exists? And there are, I would say, about 3 or 4 people that practice real, honest to God, good journalists. Well, I'd probably buy that. I'd probably buy that. But then, you know, just some of the highlights as grabbed by Lofty Pixels. Let's just share with you.
Also, the people who you're trying to shame are grown adults who really shouldn't be playing a Harry Potter game in the first place.
Fair enough. Yeah.
For reasons that have nothing to do with J.K. Rowling.
They already make bad decisions.
Grow the fuck up.
Wow.
I mean, the whole thing strikes me as a little on the Jesus-y side to begin with. So, I mean, there's just issues there.
Oh,
I'm a Jew here, so this is how I've understood it. Is that he becomes a ghost and then haunts Christians forevermore.
Yeah, that's about
like
right.
Like Casper, but more in favor of hurting people.
I just think
because the people who
can't make endless YouTube
are
videos.
normal human beings
Right.
that then reverted back to their lives, whereas this strange, light-getting basement-dwelling thuts that got upset by it are obsessive and can't let go of any perceived slight that they have in their Trump-addled world, and that's the problem.
What does Trump have to do with anything? Now, of course, I'll have to go back and edit out all those curse words because a lot of these libs, they can't speak without cursing. Like, again, I always talk about, like, they all read the same book about how, you know, some BuzzFeed listicle that said, you know, people who curse more have higher IQs, and they've all been trying to pretend ever since. Well, as you know, Adam Sessler went out of his way in this podcast to say he is not a gamer. He does not identify as a gamer. He doesn't want people to call him a gamer. So he's all fine leaving now that he's sucked all the money out of the space, though.
Just side thing. One thing I have learned in the past few days is that gamers will pay the $8.
Oh, yeah.
It is amazing.
Wow, that's somebody that only looks at their verified tab.
Because they want to be important. As they are. They're the most important people in the world.
But they're not. I now know that they're really unimportant.
Gamers are really unimportant. You mean the people that made your entire career, Adam Sessler? Absolutely pathetic. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you subscribe wherever you're watching it. YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey. Hope that I've earned your subscription today, and we'll talk to you again real soon.